Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the North East Non-League Show Looking Back With, sponsored by Jade Bell, Her Game Tune, and Facebook sponsor DJ Private Hire. And a lot of people's been asking, please get the Looking Backs on. So finally, we are back with the Looking Back, and tonight joining us is Terry Stones. Terry, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
No problem, James. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So getting on some of the early days in the career and playing for the football for the likes of Billingham Synthonia under-18s, Nunthorpe. Could you tell at that point, obviously, you want to now push on to get in the Northern League, and despite a few, obviously, knee injuries at that time?
Yeah. Well, my very first, before even Sinners under-18s, my very first experience of Northern League football, I don't know whether you remember a footballer called Tony McAndrew, who was at Middlesbrough and Chelsea. And he was a pal of my dad's when he retired up in Middlesbrough. He was a rep for Scottish and Newcastle Breweries. He was also a manager of Willington, and I was about 13, 14 playing like schools football. And I think my dad said to him, "Will you take him up to Willington to toughen him up," type of thing. So Tony took me up to Willington. I think it might have been a Wednesday night training with the first team, and I was a skinny little 13, 14-year-old, and I seen the lights and the communal bath and the big pitch and all the big fellas and all that, and they didn't take it easy on me, I can tell you. When we were knocking the ball about and having a game at the end, they were rattling into me, and it was a bit brutal. So I think it was my dad saying, "Oh, will you go take him there and toughen him up?" I only went the 1 week because the next week there was no mobiles then. That you're talking about the 80s now. And Tony came to pick me up, and he said, "Oh, don't come tonight because I'm actually going to resign tonight, so it might be a bit messy." So I only went the 1 week, but that was my very first taste of Northern League football, and I thought it was like brutal then. So the Billingham Synthonia under-18s, I don't think it happens now. It was called the Banks Group Northern League. And it was under-18s, but it was all the Northern League teams.
Oh, right, yeah.
I don't think it happens now. Well, it's happened for a long time, but it was great. And my first game at Billingham Synthonia, don't know whether you went to the old ground there, but the pitch was always immaculate and floodlights. It was a Monday night. It was absolutely lashing down. I don't know who we played. I played right back. Mum and Dad were there. And the pitch, like I say, the pitch was like Wembley, and I actually had a worldie. I was man of the match, played fantastic, probably peaked then. After that was probably all downhill, but I just playing under floodlights on like a pitch like Wembley, a bit of a crowd there. And then there was like a big communal bath at Sinners, where most of them were very small, horrible things, but at Sinners you could actually swim in it. It was massive. So, and the lads were great. So I was absolutely buzzing that night, and I'm thinking that I'm Charlie Big Bananas, I'm thinking I'm a little superstar. So that was just 1 year because it was like under-18s. But yeah, that was like a bit of an introduction to Northern League football, and the lads were great. And it's a long time ago now, but I'll bump into them. And it's just like it's just like yesterday, I've seen a couple of them recently, and "No, Tez, how you doing?" And it's that bond. We were only together a year, but you see them now, it's like that bond just in the air, and it was brilliant, yeah.
Oh, really good. And around 1995, moved to Ferry Hill Athletic Northern League Division 1. Tough start, but how did you enjoy your season? I know I've played football there loads on a Sunday morning, and the stories that we hear of Ferry Hill, like you say, a good football area. And was it good for yourself to move up that area as well?
Yeah, well, actually, James, when I was there, Ferry Hill were really struggling, and they were ground sharing at Brandon.
Right.
It was when the ground, I don't know what had happened, but I went maybe halfway through the season. I met the manager on a coaching course, and because I'd had like you mentioned, I had the knee operation, so I had a couple of years where after Sinners where wasn't playing regular, and he said, "Oh, will you come and help us?" And I said, "I'll see how my knees are." So it was like halfway through the season, they were really struggling. So we were at Brandon, and my first 2 games. My first one was at Whitby they were challenging for the title. That was a fantastic team then. I had a fight with, we got beat 6-0, and I had a fight with Neil Hodgson, which was a mistake. And the second game was at Brandon against Durham City, who were challenging for the title. We did better in that game. I think we got beat 2-0 or 2-1. But I had another fight with Dean Gibb, and that was a mistake as well. So that they introduced me properly to Northern League football, which was very nice of them, I thought. And yeah, so but they were struggling very ill. They were bottom. They're struggling to get a team, but it was a test for me to see how my knees handled it, and they handled it okay. And but it was all a bit flat really. And I think they knew that they were going to go out of business the next season, so it was a bit flat really there. But yeah,
it's hard to keep it going, isn't it, at times like that, definitely. But a good move to Shildon as well, Nick, the season after, and a good mid-table finish. But back then, like it's just touched on there, you had the likes of Whitby, Durham, Symphonia, Bentland, very, very strong sides pushing for the league, and obviously some real big characters in the league there in terms of players and managers as well, really, wasn't there?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I mentioned Dean Gibb there, and I always, he was the one player that always worried me. I was not a skillful player. I was a workhorse. My best position was right back, but I liked to be in midfield, in the thick of it, really. But I was probably kidding myself, really. Best position was right back, but I was fit and I liked to tackle, and like Ray Gowan said to me, you're a destructive player, not a constructive player, which I took as a bit of a compliment. The buzz for me was to stop the good players, and run about like a bit of an idiot, really. But Dean Gibb, over the years, I always seemed to be marking him, and he was always a player on a Friday night. I thought, I'm not looking forward to tomorrow, because he knew what you were going to get. He was going to stamp on your feet, going to elbow you, going to wind you up, do all that, and he never failed to disappoint. But them teams you mentioned, proper football teams, Sinners, the likes of Charlie Butler, Fletcher, Barney Malone, the Whitby team. That's probably the best team I've played against, the Whitby team. Especially the year, was it 96? I think they won the Vars. They scored about 130 goals. Paul Pittman scored about 60 odd goals, I think. And that team was the best team I'd played. Proper players. Neil Hodgson in the middle, Andy Tolman in the middle. So yeah, and then some character managers as well. Billy Crudas. He was a character, and the guy I played for, Ray Gowan. Some stories about him, and Ray, lovely guy, but what a character. It was just non-stop laughing at Shildon with him.
Well, some great stories. I imagine we're going to get them very shortly as well.
We will.
In the 97-98 season, I mean, we've just been chatting before we came on the show about the Northern League and our love for it. And like you said, in the Facebook group that we've run as well, everyone just talking about it. So excited because it's back the weekend as well. But the 97-98 season, that was the 100th season. I'd imagine that was very probably a part of playing in the 100th season, because it's like you say, a lot of fans talk about, a lot of managers, players, and as we do now, we talk about looking back at them years. It's a special league, isn't it?
It's a special league, but you know what, James? I didn't know until you mentioned it the other day in the questions.
Right.
I didn't. When I've thought about it now, it rings a bell that it was 100 years. So I'm going to be brutally honest. I didn't, until you highlighted the other day.
Yeah.
But I absolutely loved the Northern League. That was my level. I knew my level. I was never going to be a professional footballer, so it was, the next best thing down, I suppose. And I just tried to make the most. Like I say, I was a destructive player more than constructive. But I just loved the characters. I loved getting around the northeast to the different grounds, the banter with the fans.
Yeah.
And Alnwick always stands out. I used to love playing at Alnwick for some reason, because the fans up there always.
Grounds, isn't it?
Yeah, I was a right back, so they would always give you a stick. You were close to them, and I just used to love going up to places like Alnwick and places like that. And yeah, I loved it. My time in the Northern League was great. Loads of great people at the clubs as well. The clubs I played for, Crook, Shildon, fantastic people that, you know, just give the time up, the volunteers and all that. Some really special people at them clubs, you know.
Really good. And dropping down to Division 2 and joining Norton Stockton, obviously after moving around a couple of teams, but stayed there for a couple of years at Norton a little bit longer than the previous clubs. Did you feel it was a bit more settling down now, time to make a stamp at the club and kind of push forward?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I say, when I was at Shildon, Ray moved me around the team really, and I did like to be in the middle, in the thick of it. But at Norton, I was played in probably in my best position, right back or right wing back, because I was fit, so I could get up and down, you know, track back, do all the dirty stuff type of thing. So I was a regular in them couple of scenes at Norton, and it was obviously closer to my home. I lived in Middlesbrough, so there was less travel, and obviously when you're playing for Crooks, Shildon, and you're in Middlesbrough, you know, them couple of times during the week, you know, you're working and then you're going to train, and so it takes its toll a bit. So Norton was dead easy for me. A lot of the local lads as well. There wasn't any money at Norton then, so they were relying on local lads really. So there was a lot of Borough lads, there was a lot of Billingham lads, a mix, but they were all great lads. So I really enjoyed my time at Norton, and that was Division 2. So again, doing myself down a bit, but maybe that was my level, because when I did play in Division 1, sometimes I thought I was a little bit out my depth. So Division 2 probably suited me a bit better as well. So yeah.
Excellent. Before we get on again, I just want to say a massive thank you everyone that's watching. And again, like we said, we just hit 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate support as always. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well. But before we get into chatting about the pitch a bit more, tell us about your role as a football development coach as well, while still playing football.
Yes, that was I had 3 or 4 years. It was working for Sedgefield Borough Council, and they had a football development plan going on, and the head of it was Terry Cochran, ex Middlesbrough, Northern Ireland international. Absolute character, Terry. He's probably he ended up in Northern League. He played after professional football. He played at the Sinners, Ferry Hill. I think he was Ferry Hill manager. I think he's still local, Terry, and he would be a cracking guy to get on here as well. Irish, so he could talk all day long. Loads of stories. He played with George Best at Northern Ireland, so I absolutely loved working with Terry all day, because he'd be travelling about in the car and he'd be telling you all the stories about George Best and, you know, other footballers. So absolutely brilliant he was. And also working alongside as a goalkeeper coach, Jim Montgomery would come in, which probably doesn't need any introduction. Absolute legend at Sunderland. Lovely guy again, absolute gentleman. So he would come in and do a bit of goalkeeping coaching at the schools and the soccer camps. And Jim really opened my eyes to how goalkeepers train and how hard they train. I've never really seen it before, but I used to watch some of the drills he did with the kids, and I think Jim might have still been coaching professionally, or maybe just retired, because I think he used to talk about Pavel Cernicek quite a bit. I don't know whether he coached at Newcastle, but he was always going on about how good Cernicek was working with him. So I might be a bit wrong there, but anyway. But it opened my eyes to just how hard goalkeepers work, and in some respects, I think that they can work harder than the outfield players in you know, the drills they do and the training they do. You know, it's all reflex stuff and down and up, and so it really opened my eyes. And Jim, I took a different view of the goalkeeping stuff then, and did my own. I did a goalkeeping course because I really got into it. And I kind of focused a bit more on doing goalkeeping coaching, which I really enjoyed more than the other outfield stuff. So yeah, that was really a good 3 or 4 years. And we'd do ground tours. We'd go to Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Sunderland with the kids on a day out, and go around the changing rooms and seeing the little kids' faces when they walk into the changing rooms and all. That was absolutely fantastic. So it was a great little job for, like I say, 3 or 4 years. Brilliant, yeah.
Oh, I mean, dream job, isn't it? Brilliant. That's fantastic, that. And 1999, and we always see when we have players on, they always go back to one club. And Shildon was yours, obviously, going back there. How did that all come around? And did you really enjoy that season going back there with obviously regular faces, manager as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed my second stint better at Shildon than the first one, because, again, the first stint, they were in Division 1, and they had some really, really good players. The first stint, they had Matty Sowden, Steve Ritchie in the middle, so I couldn't grumble with that. The right back was Neil Hoban. He'd just been released from Aston Villa, so I couldn't really jump in ahead of him. I couldn't really have any complaints there. Neil worked a lot, but so when Neil worked, Ray would then put me in at right back.
Yes,
and when Neil wasn't working, I'd be back on the bench, and then Neil would be in. But like I say, just been released by Aston Villa, and he was a brilliant right back, Neil. So I was the first stint, I was a little bit in and out and a little bit of a bit bad player. Second one, again, back in Division 2, suited me better. Played more in the middle, I think, my second stint in the midfield, where I like to be. And it was Ray was great at just putting a really good group of lads together as well. The team spirit there was brilliant at Shildon. Some really good lads, characters. Don't know whether you've ever heard of John Outhwaite, big forward. He was about 6'5", John, absolute nutter, but guaranteed to score 30 goals if he had the right delivery, which he would normally get off Charlie Walton on the left wing, with his head and all that. John was absolutely fantastic. Going to a funny story about John and Ray at Shildon at that time. We were playing up at it's Blue Star now, but was it RTM Newcastle years ago?
It's a name, wasn't it? Yeah, I had a few names on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was RTM at that time, and we were playing up there. And I think we were getting beat 2 or 3-0 at half time. But as I've just mentioned, Big John there. Big John was, like I say, he was 6'5", didn't really have the best dress sense, turned up in some dodgy clothes, we could say. Wasn't bothered about shaving or anything like that, but absolute cracking lad. Liked a pint after the game, and sometimes maybe before games as well, I think. But absolute cracking lad. But we were getting beat at half time 2 or 3-0. And we comes in, and we're all sat down, heads down, and all that. And then Ray walks in, and am I all right to swear a little bit?
Oh yeah, go for it.
And Ray comes in, and he just looks at John, and he said, "This is the fucking problem. We're playing like you fucking look." So, what you on about, Razor? He said, "We're playing like you fucking look, you big scruffy twat." He said, "Socks down, different boots, different coloured laces, unshaven, shirt out, no shin pads, one sleeve up, one sleeve." And that's how we're fucking playing. And that's why we're fucking 3-0 down to this lot here. And John's saying, all right, Razor, all right. and everybody's like, the shoulders are going like that, but nobody there, nobody's looking at Ray and all that, because you would get it next. But and he just picked on John that night, and he was a big gentle giant. John, he's 6'5", but he was just a gentle giant. But that was funny. That it didn't do us any good. I think we ended up getting beat about 5 or 6-0. But
I was going to say, it normally gets lifted up a bit, doesn't it? You change things around, doesn't it?
It never. It never. John's face was a picture. What you're on about, Razor?
Brilliant. And in 2000, moving to Crook, and I know we've got a lot of fans in the Facebook group with Crook as well. Fantastic club, lots of volunteers up there, absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
At this point, Division 1, full of quality. And over the years of playing throughout the 90s, pushing out to 2000, did you feel like the league was getting stronger, or the other way?
I think it was going the other way at that point, James. Like I say, we mentioned earlier them teams, Whitby, Sinners, Bedlington, Durham, in the 90s when I was playing. They were really, really strong. Like I say, the pick of the bunch for me was Whitby. Didn't like going to Bedlington either. That was a horrible place to go. And Sinners, they were a fantastic team as well. We just never got the ball off. When you were playing at Sinners, you just never got the ball off them. And Durham, of course, at that time. So, but as it was getting to at Crook, again, Crook was struggling at that time when I went. That was a bad move for me, really. I think I'd spat me dummy out with Ray. Strangely enough, when I say I was a destructive player, for some reason I went back in pre-season with Shildon, and I was probably the best player. For some reason, I don't know what happened in here, but I stopped running about like an idiot, and I, stopped thinking I should be tackling like a lunatic, and getting sent off and all this, and I concentrated on playing football. And I was passing it. I was passing the ball, and receiving it and turning, and lads couldn't believe it. And I started the season really well, and all the lads were saying, "You've been our best player." And I think, I don't know, maybe after about 3 or 4 months, Ray just dropped me for some reason. Me being me, I just spat me dummy out. I thought, well, I've been doing well, spat me dummy out, and then said, I want to get away. And Ray, yeah, go on then. I don't even know how Crook happened, actually. I don't know whether Ray'd put me out for transfer or whatever, but Crook were obviously struggling at the bottom, and Dennis Pinkney came in for me. Went to Crook, but that was a bad move. It was there was no Teesside lads, so we'd train on a Monday night, Wednesday night. You'd be at work all day, so going to Crook, and then it was an hour and 10 minutes to get back to Middlesbrough on a night. So it was like 11 o'clock on a night when I was getting back, and I was in the car on my own, and it made me realise travelling with 3 or 4 lads in a car helps quite a lot. Where I was going to games on my own, and invariably, because we were struggling, we were getting good hidings, and so I had my head down in the car, and type of thing. So it was a bit of a bad move, and brilliant football club, great people again. The manager, Dennis Pinkney, absolute gentleman. I think he's a bit of a legend at Crook. I think he's done everything from being mascot to a player to I think he went in goal when I was at Crook. Were we at Dunstan? Might have been at Dunstan, and we didn't have a goalkeeper. I think Dennis was about 45, and he went in goal, and I think we got beat about 10-0 at Dunstan. And I think one of the interviews with Dennis in the paper the next day, he said, I think they've made the goals bigger since I played. But I remember him being in goal. I'm sure it was at Dunstan. He had to go in goal, and I think he's been manager, coach, everything there. He's I think he might have the record appearances as well at Crook. But a lovely fella. Probably a bit too nice to be one of them guys. A bit too nice to be a manager. Where Ray was a manager, he would tell you, but yeah, bit of a bad move, Crook, for me.
Yeah, and I think that was
just come to me there about Ray again. We're on about stories there. Ray, talking about him being a manager. I can't remember who we were playing at home, but Ray was getting a bit worked up with the referee, which he often did. And all of a sudden, I was on the bench this time, and all of a sudden, Ray shouted out, and I think you could hear it in Bishop Auckland. Ray just shouted out with his big Cockney voice, "Referee, you fucking cheating curly-haired C." I won't say the C word. You cheating curly-haired C. So the whole ground went quiet, and the referee stopped the game, and we're all on the bench thinking, he's not going to like being called a cheat. But I think referees don't, do they? But it wasn't anything like that. He came over. I don't know what the referee's name was. He came over, went face to face with Ray, and he just said, "You can call me anything, Ray, but don't call me a curly-haired C." And Ray just apologised, and the ref went off, and we're all laughing on the bench. We said, "It's all right to call him a cheat, then, Ray." You know? But yeah, I think they had that in Bishop Auckland. The old stand behind, just that was Ray.
Brilliant. And you just mentioned obviously the season at Crook and it being a tough season, obviously travelling for training and for matches and getting beaten. It's obviously relegation as well. And obviously after that season, playing Sunday League football and a game for Marsk and a friendly as well. At that time, you think obviously was it in your head, or do you think it was more injuries that the reason that you stopped playing?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Crook, I also I lost my mum at Crook. My mum died, so obviously that wasn't a great period. I missed maybe 1 or 2 games, and when I went back to play, the fight wasn't in me, type of thing. I was obviously grieving, and the fight wasn't in me, I don't know who we were playing, but somebody, you know what it's like. People say nasty things. I've said nasty things to players, and I won't say what the player said to me, but I was having a bit of chew with him, and he made a derogatory remark about my mum, and she'd only just died about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the thing I thought was it didn't bother me because the fight had gone. If it had been any other time, I'd have had a right fight with him and what have you. But it kind of didn't bother me, and I thought my fight's gone, so I didn't say anything, didn't do anything. And I thought, yeah, I should be bothered about that, and I'm not, so I was kind of going through the motions a bit. Plus I was getting on a little bit, and when the 18 and 19-year-old boys are flying past you and, in training as well, taking a piss out you in training, I think, no, hang on. I think, like I say, what happened with my mum and getting on a bit, I was falling out of love with it a little bit at Crook, so I just thought, that's me done, really.
Yeah, and obviously at that time as well, we touched on it earlier about the characters in the game, and obviously said that it was going back was kind of the playing side of things that going into the 2000s. Was it the same for characters as well? I mean, back in the 90s, there was obviously changing rooms, big characters, leaders, like you say, men pretty much compared to what you look at the footballers now, and you could just kind of see the characters dying out in the game as the years went on as well.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Like I say, my first experience, that Wellington experience, I was just a boy, but I think I was scared of them.
Yeah.
And and then going into the Northern League, I could always, like I said, I could always give what I got off players, strong players. But yeah, it was. I'm glad I played then, even though it was hard and tough and all them characters were there. I'm glad I played then because I think I think I'd struggle now because, like I say, my game then was getting about and tackling and breaking things up and then just giving the ball to somebody that could play. I had quite a few reds in my time, certainly hundreds of yellows. So I think I'd struggle now because it's becoming a bit of a non-contact game, isn't it? And
it is.
It's yeah. I'm glad I played it in there with all the strong boys and the characters and all that. I don't know whether them characters. I don't go watch that much of it now to know what the teams are like and the characters are like nowadays. But I sense from some of them I have seen that them characters have gone now, I think, which is quite sad. It's a different game, isn't it? It's a different world that we live in now to what it was in the 90s, and it's just mad at the moment. But yeah.
And that ties in quite nicely. The next one, I was changing rooms back then now compared to obviously the years now. And I think I was quite lucky out at New College at the time. We had Colin Myers as manager, obviously ex-Bishop, and obviously it was pretty much old school fashioned in the changing room. As soon as he went, the lights would get switched off for a minute, the balls would get kicked around. You used to cut people's laces, pinch someone's trainers, peel someone's foot in the shower. And I think kind of when I left college, and that's when we kind of seen them days stop now, where back in Chinham's, that it was just lads heads down on the phone, social media, coming in drunk, and just very bothered. And obviously with the differences that you've seen the Chinham's back then, I bet you've got a couple of good stories as well.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, going back to the phone thing there, I mean, I'd struggle with that now in dressing rooms because
Yeah.
you know, like you say, everybody's like that in the dressing room, I suppose now, and that does my head in the phone business, you know. But anyway, but there was one in a dressing room at Shildon. There was don't know whether you've ever come across him, Les Langley.
Yes, I used to be a coach at New College, actually. Yeah.
You know Les, right? Les is a great guy. And Les, I was at Shildon with Les. Sorry, I'll just bloody hay fever, mate. Les was a great guy, and Les was very well connected. He had nightclubs and pubs in the Darlington area, and he was just one of them guys who was very connected. Knew quite a few celebrities and stuff like that. And we were training one night at Shildon. And I don't know whether you've heard of Dougie Grant as well.
No, I'm not talking that.
Right, he was a forward. Again, lovely guy, Dougie. Maybe a little bit naive, but lovely fella. And we were training we were in the dressing room getting changed. And Les, you all right? What you been up to, mate? And Les, I was at the Brit Awards last night. All right, as you do, you know. All right, okay. And that's like the life Les had. So he said, I was at the Brit Awards. All right, who were you with? And he said, no, just with a couple of pals. But I met Jordan, Katie Price, and Jordan back in the day before now, where she's had everything, everything's plastic and the lips are out here and all that. She was an absolute stunner when she first came onto the scene. So Les said, yeah, I met Jordan. He said, I've never really been stuck for words. He said, but and Les he wasn't very big, Les. Mm-hmm. He said, and yeah, he met her, but I just didn't know what to say. She's absolutely stunning. He said, I looked up at her, and said she was like all there, in front of me and all that. And I was lost for words. And hello, Les, I'm Jordan. And he said, he was like that. And he said, I was absolutely speechless. I didn't know what to say. She's absolutely gorgeous. And Dougie in the corner went, oh, he said, I know what you mean. Dougie was a big Leeds fan. He said, I know what you mean, Les. He said, I was like that when I met Gordon Strachan. I thought, well, not quite the same, Dougie, but yeah, we know what you mean, mate. All the lads just, burst out laughing. But yeah,
some cracking stories over the years, man. Brilliant as well. And touch on to 2018, you were diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and obsession compulsive disorder as well. And back in those days, I know you've spoke about obviously some of the shows that you've watched. I know we very massive in our Facebook groups. We always have the support in there if anyone ever needs them as well. I mean, looking back in the 90s, could you see that players were struggling but just couldn't kind of let it out at that time?
I'm not so sure about struggling. I wouldn't name the guy. There was one lad at Shildon that was like nowadays with what we know now, you would possibly say bipolar. That he was flat sometimes. There was no talking to him. And then the next night in training, he'd be absolutely all over the place, erratic and all that. A great lad. He was quite a bit younger than me, but like looking back to what I know now, because I've educated myself about mental health and my own diagnosis, I would say possibly bipolar. When I got my diagnosis, I'm very probably one of my best mates now who was goalkeeper at Norton, Tony Atwood. I told Tony, he's had some struggles himself as well over recent years, and I said, I got diagnosed with BPD and OCD, and I thought I did this to a few people. I told a few people about my diagnosis, because what happened was, just to touch on it a little bit, I had a breakdown in 2016, And I got help, and I got psychiatrist, and through help and what have you, they diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder and OCD. So that was the best thing that happened to me, because I could understand. I always knew there was something not quite right with me for 40 odd years. So that was the best thing that happened to me, because I could then educate myself and understand and put things in place to improve things for myself, which I have done, and I'm in a good place right now. But I said to Tony, I said, "Oh, I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and what have you," and I'm expecting him, and like I say, I've said it to other people, I'm expecting them to be shocked, because I thought I could mask it, and I'd played with Tony for years, and he went, "I'm not surprised." He said, I always knew there was something wrong with you. I went, "All right." He said, if ever, because I used to go to training I would pick Tony up, go training with him, go to the games with him. He said, whenever you pick me up, Terry, he said, as soon as I got in the car, I knew if I could talk to you that day. He said, I could see by your face, right, I'm just going to leave you alone today because you're not in the mood. And then I could look and think, oh, you're all right today. We're going to have a good laugh today, you know. And I said that to a few of my friends and my family, and a lot of them said, "Well, we always knew there was something not right with you." I thought I was very good at, masking it.
Yeah.
So I think that I won't have been the only one in all them years to have struggled, and I was very impressed with Lee Haldane when you had him on. He obviously touched on, he's had a few struggles, and what he does now, like he said, the game's changed, but he also looks after his players' well-being now, which is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
So but back in the day, there's no way I could have said to any lads, and that's not being disrespectful to them, but there's no way I could have spoke like I am to you now, and and the work I do, I speak to people at work, men at work, about me struggles, and they speak to me about their struggles. But in the 90s, there was no way I was going to open my mouth in the dressing room. People wouldn't have known what you were talking about. Exactly. People would have been comfortable.
Oh, lost Terry there. We're back in a moment there. There we go.
Yeah.
Just lost it for a second there.
All right. So yeah, there's no way you would have opened your mouth back then, So it's better nowadays, I think.
Yeah, and it's good now as well because you're helping people as well, isn't it? That's the main thing as well. You're helping the people out there as well.
Yes, my job now, I work at like a homeless shelter. So obviously that comes with people that have obviously mental health difficulties. So I get a lot of satisfaction from that job, and I also, up until recently, the last 2 or 3 years, I was involved in an NHS project, which they've got people in that would have like diagnoses like myself that have struggled to talk to like psychiatrists and doctors and other service users, because what they always say is, we're not the one with the condition, you are, so you tell us how we can improve our services. And I really enjoyed doing that. I've just kind of said I'm a bit busy at work at the moment, so I've just stopped doing that. But that was all voluntary stuff, and it was a little bit like this, talking over Teams and what have you to doctors and what have you. Just from my point of view, being when I've had my struggles and my battles, just giving my point of view of how things could be better and giving them people a bit more of an insight. So that was really good. Yeah.
No, definitely, it's good work. And finishing off our quick fire, which I've been looking forward to this for God knows how many months now. I know we haven't had a looking back with you, so this is what you saw was the favourite part of my show. Lots of good stories as well. So going through 5 questions for you, Terry, which I'm really excited to hear some of the answers. So start with number 1, the best manager that you worked under.
Do I need to put the light on, James? Is it a bit dark, or are we all right?
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, I can say yeah.
Right, okay. It would have to be Ray. Just a lovely guy, a proper football man. I think I told you he's got a book out, and that's, if you like your Northern League football, that's a cracking read. and non-stop laughs with him. Real character of the game. Knew the game inside out, type of thing. Drove you up the wall at times. Absolutely drove you up the wall, and I spat me dummy out with Ray. Quite a few times, but yeah, it would have to be Ray. Lovely guy, proper football man.
Excellent. We're definitely going to try and get him off me a little break in a
Try
couple of weeks. Definitely.
I think he's in South Africa now, but
Right.
you can do it over here. So
definitely, that'll be brilliant. Number 2, the best teammate that you played with.
Yeah, this really hard. There's a couple I would mention, and it's not just because he's one of my best mates, but Tony Atwood, a goalkeeper at Norton. He was at Leeds and at Newcastle as a junior, and he was like 6'6", built like a brick shite house. Very, very, very commanding of his area. Very loud, vocal. Organised his back four, and if there was one person that should have been a professional footballer, it was Tony. He probably wouldn't mind me saying he probably didn't have the dedication and the heart for it. But talent-wise, goalkeeping, absolutely fantastic. There was a lad at Norton Harbour who went on to be a very good footballer, tough tackle in midfield. He could pass it as well, but went on to used to love playing with Harbour because he'd look after you as well and what have you. But I am going to say it would be Charlie Walton. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Charlie. Left winger or left back at Shildon. He was there for, about 50 years, I think. He was week in, week out, first name on the team sheet. You knew on the left-hand side it was going to be Charlie. And in the Sunday Sun, when you used to look at your marks, Charlie was always an 8. Never higher, never lower. He was just constantly an 8.
Yeah.
Brilliant left foot, brilliant at free kicks, brilliant at corners. And I think when I left Shildon, maybe about 3 or 4 seasons after, I think he got named Player of the Season in the Northern League.
Nice.
I won maybe a few years after I left, and that'll have been well deserved. Very, very quiet lad, but didn't cause any trouble. But just for his consistency, it would be Charlie.
Yeah, and
fit as a fiddle because he was a postman, so he was fit as a fiddle as well. He could run all day and all night, Charlie. So yeah, Charlie was brilliant. Yeah,
excellent. And number 3, best opposition
James,
player.
I'm going to put the light on because I can't see myself.
Yeah.
That's
there we go. Yeah, number 3, best opposition player.
You wouldn't want to miss out on this face, would you?
I know. And yeah, number 3, the best opposition player that you played against, that one who you just could never get the best of.
Right. Can I give you a couple beforehand?
Definitely, yeah.
Couple of pros, because obviously when like now, pre-season, you sometimes come up against the pro clubs, don't you? Mm-hmm. So like at Shildon, we always played Darlington. At Norton, we would play like the Middlesbrough reserve team. You will know this guy, being a Newcastle fan, I would think. But he played left back. I was playing for Norton and we played Newcastle reserves. And for some reason, I don't know whether he just come back with an injury. It was a very young team, but Aaron Hughes played for them.
Ah, yes, yeah.
Back.
Great player. Yeah.
He was absolutely brilliant. And looking at him, I thought, because I was obviously full back as well, I thought, that's how you play full back, And when you come up against the pros, you think you can play football until you're up against the proper lads, don't you? It's like I was at the Scottish Open a couple of weeks ago watching the golfers, and I used to play a lot of golf. And you think you can play golf till you see them boys close up, and you haven't got a clue, have you? But Aaron Hughes was fantastic. Gary Bennett, when he played at Darlington, back end of his career, we played them. I was at Shildon. He played at the back. He just had a cigar and his slippers on, and you could see he'd been an absolutely fantastic footballer. But I've already mentioned the guy. He probably wasn't the best player I played against, but I hated playing against Dean Gibb. That my second game Northern League, like I say, I picked on him. That was a mistake. You know, his words to me was, "You're gonna fucking go the journey with me now," and I did. And I always seemed to be marking him. And yeah, like I say, on a Friday night, he was the only player I thought, I'm really not looking forward to tomorrow. Like I say, he'd stamp on your feet, he'd elbow you, he'd wind you up, you know, do all the tricks. And he was a good footballer as well. But like I say, I played against better ones, but he was always the one that just put the frighteners on me. He was the only one, really. So yeah, with Dean, and he was a big lad as well. So, but again, like it should be, after the game, shook hands, and in the bar afterwards, a brilliant lad, and you just laugh about it and have a pint. Isn't it? And he was a really good, he was a really good lad, but horrible to play against.
And number 4, your best footballing moment.
There's not many, mate, unfortunately. I know you've had some lads on here, and I would love to sit here and say, oh, when I won the FA Vase at Wembley, or when I got to the first round of the FA Cup. Strangely, when I left Shildon about 2 seasons after, they got to the first round of the FA Cup and they played Notts County. So you know what I mean. And that's because I spat my dummy out with Ray. So yeah, I was good. I was happy for them, but I was gutted, you know. So yeah, I would love, and I'd love to say I won the league and all that. Like you've had some lads on. I did have missed out on a couple of promotions. I think my best moment was playing in the FA Cup. It was in the qualifying rounds at beginning September, playing for Shildon. We played at Clitheroe, and I scored an absolute worldie, if I say so myself, outside the box, caught it sweet, top corner. Nobody could believe it. I couldn't believe it. But and then I got sent off 20 minutes later, and we got beat 4-1. So I was dead popular in the dressing room and dead popular on the bus home with Ray. I don't think Ray played me for about 10 games after that. But I always say, and I say it now, when I bore the arse off my partner, I can say I scored in the FA Cup. So when the FA Cup's ever on telly, I say to Jan, I've scored in the FA Cup, you know, and I yeah, you fucking told me, you know. That's me, I like scoring in the FA Cup at Clitheroe, but there we go.
Brilliant, man, brilliant. And final question, your funniest football moment that you've been involved in or seen over the years?
That's dead easy, because I'll never forget it. Playing for Norton, we were playing, I think it was Eppleton at Norton, and Eppleton had 2 absolutely gigantic lads playing for them, and which we later found out they were bouncers in Sunderland, and they were just there really to fight and cause havoc, which is what they did. But it all kicked off. I tackled one of them, and he knocked me to the ground, and I went to get up, and then he pushed his shoulder into me and knocked me on the ground, type of thing. So I stayed on the ground to try to get him sent off. And our coach, Gary Levitt, he started having a go at him. Some of our lads came over to him. Gary Levitt's on the sideline saying, you know, you big twat, come over here and do that. What have you done to him there? You know, I'm on the floor trying to get him sent off, and I'm like looking around, and there's about 3 or 4 fights going on. And then just like a little bit further up, I think in like the centre circle, the other big bouncer had one of our players, Darren Trotter, otherwise known as Dell for obvious reasons, had him up by the neck, in the air, like that. And you know, like you see on a cartoon, the legs are going like that. Dell's legs are going like that in the air, and he's getting choked. And everybody just stopped and looked over and just started pissing themselves laughing. And it like diffused it all. And I got up. I thought, well, he's not going to get sent off. So I got up. And anyway, this bouncer, he looked around. Everybody's laughing. So he put Dell down, or dropped him down. And then Dell was only like about 10 stone ring and wet. he was like a nice footballer, not a nasty footballer.
Yeah.
So Dell's gone white. Dell's shirt's all over the place. So Dell gets up and he's doing that with his shirt. But talk about comedy time, and our manager, Andy. Are we there?
Still there, yeah.
Yeah. Our manager, Andy McCreesh, God bless him, talk about comedy time and just shouted over to Dell. He said, "Well done, Dell. You did well not to retaliate there, son." And I thought I wouldn't have liked to see it if Dell did retaliate, but that was so funny. And whenever I think about that moment now, I still piss myself laughing. And yeah,
it's brilliant. I was just sticking in your memory, man. It's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant story, that.
But Dell's legs he was in the air and like a cartoon. His legs were just going, brilliant.
Fantastic. No, Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. We really appreciate it, and some fantastic stories. So we thank you very much for coming on.
Enjoyed it, mate. No problem.
Excellent. And again, thank you everyone that's been watching as well. Really appreciate your support throughout the show as well, and hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Lots of shows coming on next week before we have a little break. Next Tuesday, we've got a former Newcastle player, David Burke, coming on for a little interview. I know he's on a couple of weeks ago with his daughter Daisy, speaking about ladies football, but he's going to come on and chat about his career at Newcastle. We've got the Newcastle Ladies Show next Wednesday night, and on Thursday night, we've got the Newcastle Blue Star special with Andrew Bulford coming on as well. Some fantastic shows before we have a little break as well. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night, and thank you so much, Terry, for coming on as well.
Thank you. Cheers, James.